Tommy Robinson walked out of Westminster Magistrates Court today with a judgment that is bigger than him. It is in effect a judicial reminder that counter-terrorism powers are not a roving warrant to fish through the phones of people the police happen to dislike. District Judge Sam Guzzi was explicit. He could not get out of his mind that it was what Robinson stood for and his political beliefs that were the real reason for the stop. That single finding collapses the whole Schedule D exercise. If the stop was not lawful, the requirement to hand over the PIN cannot stand, so there's no offence. So in July 2024, Robinson was driving a friend's Bentley to Benidorm. At the Channel Tunnel, he was stopped under Schedule C of the Terrorism Act 2000. That power is very unusual in British law. It can be used at ports without prior suspicion in order to find out whether a person is involved in terrorism. Officers decided they wanted the PIN for Tommy's phone. He refused, saying there was journalistic material on it, as well as sensitive information about vulnerable girls. For that reason, he was charged with a terrorism-related offence. Today, he was acquitted because the judge found the stop itself was not properly grounded in the statutory purpose. Two things undermined the police. First, they recognised him immediately and admitted it. Second, they could not even remember with any precision what they asked him in the 40 minutes they held him. That makes it look arbitrary. The judge said so, and once an examination looks arbitrary, Schedule 7 collapses. Schedule 7 is one of the strongest powers on the UK statute book. You can be stopped with no prior suspicion, you must answer, you can be held for up to 6 hours. You can be required to hand over phone passwords. Refusal is a criminal offence. Parliament tolerated all of that because it was told these powers would be used for terrorism, not for politics, nor for border theatre, and not because an officer has spotted a controversial figure in a nice car. The judge has essentially said today that this was politics first, terrorism nowhere. That is a misuse of the power. And that matters for police forces because it narrows the practical space in which they can say, we needed the password. It signals that courts will test whether the real purpose of the stop matches the statutory purpose. Robinson said no for an intelligible reason. Phones are where a 2025 journalist stores sources. Schedule 7 does have mechanisms for handling journalistic material, but they only make sense if the original stop is lawful. If the stop is tainted by discrimination, then the attempt to prise open the phone is tainted too. The judge has not created a blanket journalist's privilege at the border. What he has done is more precise. He said, if your stop is driven by the person's protected political views, you cannot found a criminal conviction on the refusal that follows. That is the precedent that is set today. For citizen reporters, migrant hotel streamers, local auditors and the entire ecosystem of alternative media, this is an important signal. Police cannot simply say terrorism and expect every other right to evaporate. The most stinging part of the judgment is the finding that this looked like an arbitrary decision about who you are. That cuts to two core safeguards in British public law. Decisions must be for the proper purpose and they must not discriminate on protected grounds, which in this case included political belief. When a judge writes in open court that officers could not give a coherent account of their questions and appeared to have been influenced by a subject's political stance, that is a public dressing down. It's also a warning to counter-terrorism units that the courts are watching how Schedule D is being stretched. And this is why I think that this judgment today could curtail some of the more absurd accretions around the concept of terrorism and policing. If Schedule 7 becomes the all-purpose key to a phone, it will be used on protesters, controversial preachers, dissident journalists, even on people returning from an embarrassing foreign conference. Today's ruling slows that drift. There is a second layer here. Elon Musk's funding of the case turns a narrow port stop into an internationalized row about who gets to bankroll litigation in Britain. Ministers and MPs are already anxious about outside figures underwriting far-right or hard-right campaigns. They will dislike the optics of Musk paying the bill and Robinson winning, but they will dislike even more the fact that the judge's reasoning is so clean. You cannot explain this away. as a technical acquittal. It is a finding of unlawful stop. That exposes the police, not the funder. So when politicians say this will send a shiver through Britain, they are thinking about two things. First, the reach of a foreign billionaire into a sensitive UK counter-terrorism case, and second, the way this verdict can now be cited by other activists who say they were stopped because of what they believe, not what they did. It'll make port officers more painstaking about recording their reasons. The judge was plainly irritated that notes were poor or missing. That is low-hanging fruit for defence counsel in any future case. It will strengthen arguments in future Schedule D challenges that a person's political profile cannot be the dominant or principal reason for the stop. And the court has now said that aloud. It will give media organisations something to point to when they tell their reporters to resist overboard digital demands. If Robinson can say my phone has sources and win because the stop was unlawful, then mainstream reporters can certainly say so where the power is being stretched. It will fuel scrutiny of the gradual inflation of terrorism powers into a catch-all for public order issues. That is part of the concern about absurd powers. The judgment supports my criticism. It doesn't abolish Schedule D, of course. It doesn't create immunity for activists, but it does stop the police trying again, better trained and better documented, against someone else. It doesn't resolve Robinson's other cases, but it does introduce a friction into the system. Officers will have to ask, can I justify this as counter-terrorism if a judge hears it in 12 months' time? Robinson has already identified the weak points for legacy media. Many of them sat through the case. Many of them led on the cash and the Bentley. Very few led on the discrimination argument until the judge himself adopted it. That will be used by citizen journalists as proof that establishment outlets protect police from embarrassment. Whether or not that's entirely fair, today the optics favour Tommy Robinson. So the headline is simple. A court has said you cannot dress up political dislike as counter-terrorism and then criminalise a refusal to unlock your phone. That is healthy for the rule of law. It's healthy for journalism. Even journalism you or I might find abrasive. And it's a reminder to the police that every extraordinary power in the Terrorism Act carries with it an implied question from the bench. Are you using this for terrorism or for convenience? Today the answer was convenience, and therefore the case fell to pieces.